A stranger at my gym shoved a note into my locker warning me about my personal trainer, and when I ignored it, she physically grabbed my arm and begged me to leave. 24 hours later, I understood exactly what she was trying to save me from, and by then, I'd already given him everything he needed to destroy my life. My name is Brianna Cole, and the man I trusted to help me get healthy had been watching me in my own home for months. 4 months before that terrifying warning, I joined Peak Fitness, a gym in downtown Seattle that my coworker kept raving about. I was 26, working as a graphic designer from home, and honestly, I'd let myself go. The pandemic had turned me into someone who barely left her apartment. I'd gained weight, lost confidence, and spent most of my time alone staring at a computer screen. I needed something to shake me out of that rut, something to make me feel strong again. Ryan Mercer was assigned as my trainer during the free introductory session that came with my membership. He was 32, good-looking in that polished fitness instructor way, with perfect teeth and the kind of easy confidence that made you believe every word he said. He told me he'd been training clients for 8 years and specialized in helping women achieve their transformation goals. He even showed me before and after photos on his phone of clients he'd supposedly helped, and I was impressed. These women looked amazing, and he seemed to really care about their success. We started training 3 times a week, and I have to admit, Ryan was good at his job. He was encouraging without being pushy, always knew exactly what to say when I wanted to quit, and genuinely seemed invested in my progress. He'd text me between sessions asking how I felt, reminding me to drink enough water, sending me meal plans and motivational quotes. It felt personal, like he actually cared about me succeeding, instead of just collecting a paycheck. Within 6 weeks, I'd lost 15 pounds and felt stronger than I had in years. But looking back now, I can see how Ryan's interest went way beyond normal trainer-client boundaries. He started asking really personal questions during our sessions. Was I dating anyone? Did I live alone or have roommates? What exactly did I do for work? At first, it just seemed like friendly conversation, the kind of small talk you'd have with someone you see regularly. I didn't think twice about telling him I was single, living by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, working remotely as a freelance graphic designer. He asked about my family too, and I told him my parents had retired to Arizona 2 years ago, and my younger sister Kendall lived in Portland with her husband. We weren't super close anymore since everyone had moved to different states. Ryan nodded like he really understood and said that building community was just as important as building muscle. It sounded wise at the time. Now it makes my skin crawl. Around the 3-month mark, Ryan suggested I should start coming in for sessions during off-peak hours when the gym was quieter. "You're making such incredible progress," he said with that confident smile. "I want to really focus on perfecting your form without all the distractions of a crowded gym." It made perfect sense to me. I started showing up at 6 in the morning when the place was basically empty. Just me, Ryan, and maybe 2 other early birds who kept to themselves. Ryan also told me about this fitness tracking app that he said all his serious clients used. It would sync with my phone and track my movements, sleep patterns, and daily routines so he could optimize my training plan. I downloaded it immediately and approved every permission it asked for without reading them. Why wouldn't I? I trusted him completely. He was helping me become a better version of myself. My best friend Natasha mentioned once that she thought Ryan seemed a little too interested in my personal life. "I don't know, Bree," she'd said over coffee one Sunday. "It just seems like he asks a lot of questions that aren't really about fitness." I'd brushed her off immediately. "He's just being a good trainer, Tosh. That's literally his job, to care about his clients and understand their lives." She'd given me this look like she wanted to say more, but decided against it, and we dropped the subject. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support means everything. That Tuesday morning when everything changed, I arrived at Peak Fitness at 6 a.m. like always. I walked into the women's locker room to put my bag away and change into my workout clothes. The locker room was completely empty except for one other woman I'd never seen before. She was probably in her early 40s with shoulder-length blonde hair and this anxious, almost frantic look on her face that immediately made me uncomfortable. I opened my locker and was putting my gym bag inside when she walked straight up to me and shoved a folded piece of paper into my hand. "Read this," she said quietly, her voice shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "Please, just read it right now and leave the gym immediately." I unfolded the paper, more confused than concerned, and saw handwriting that was rushed and messy like someone had written it in a panic. It said, "Your trainer isn't who you think he is. Ryan Mercer is not a certified trainer. He's been stalking women through this gym for 2 years. Leave now before it's too late." I looked up at her, and she was staring at me with these desperate, frightened eyes that honestly made me think she might be having some kind of mental health crisis. "I'm serious," she whispered, glancing toward the locker room door like she was afraid someone might walk in. "I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but you need to trust me. Don't train with him today. Don't go out there." My first reaction was annoyance mixed with a little bit of fear. You hear stories about unstable people at gyms, and this felt like one of those situations. "I don't know what you think is happening," I said, trying to sound polite but firm. "But Ryan is a professional. I've been training with him for months, and he's been nothing but helpful and respectful." The woman's face crumpled with frustration, and something that looked like genuine fear for me. "That's exactly what he does. That's his entire method. He gains your trust, gets close to you, learns everything about your life and your schedule and where you live. Then he uses all of that information." She reached out and grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough that it actually hurt. "My name is Valerie. Ryan did this exact same thing to me last year. He knows everything about you now, Brianna. He knows where you live, when you're home alone, what your routines are. That app he had you download on your phone? It's tracking your location constantly. He's been watching you outside the gym for weeks now." I pulled my arm away from her grip, and my heart was starting to pound, but more from anger than actual fear. "How do you even know my name? Have you been watching me too? This is completely insane." Valerie's eyes filled with tears, and she looked like she might start crying right there in the locker room. "I know your name because I've been trying to warn the women he targets before it's too late. I've been coming to this gym at different times for weeks, trying to catch you before one of your sessions. Please, Brianna, you have to listen to me." I reported him to the gym management last year, but they didn't believe me. "He's so careful. He doesn't do anything obvious here at the gym where people can see. It's what he does outside, when you're alone. That's dangerous." I shook my head and stuffed the note into my gym bag, just wanting to get away from this woman and her paranoid conspiracy theories. "I think you need professional help, but it's not going to come from me. I'm sorry for whatever you think happened to you, but Ryan has been completely professional with me since day one." I walked past her toward the locker room door, and she called after me, her voice breaking with desperation. "He has photos of you, Brianna. Photos you don't know he took. Photos from inside your apartment. Please don't go out there. Just leave right now and check your apartment when you get home. Check for cameras. Check your bedroom, your bathroom, everywhere." I pushed through the door into the main gym area, my hands shaking slightly, but telling myself it was just adrenaline from a weird and uncomfortable encounter with someone who clearly wasn't stable. Ryan was waiting for me by the weight machines, like always, smiling his usual friendly, encouraging smile. "Morning, Bree," he said cheerfully. "Ready to crush this workout?" He looked completely normal, exactly like he always did, like the trustworthy professional I'd been working with for months. I forced myself to smile back even though Valerie's words were still echoing in my head. "Yeah, let's do it." But throughout that entire training session, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. The app tracking my location, photos I didn't know existed, cameras hidden in my apartment. It all sounded like paranoid delusion, like something from a psychological thriller movie, not real life. Except Ryan did know an awful lot about me. He knew my exact address because he'd offered to drop off supplements at my place once when I'd mentioned being too swamped with work to pick them up from the gym. He knew my daily schedule better than most of the actual people in my life. And that fitness app had requested a lot of phone permissions that seemed excessive for something that was supposed to just track workouts and steps. I sat in my car in the gym parking lot for almost 20 minutes after the session ended, staring at that crumpled note from my gym bag and trying to decide if I was being paranoid or smart. Everything Valerie had said sounded extreme and dramatic, like something that happens in movies but not in real life to normal people like me. But the more I sat there thinking about it, the more small details started bothering me in ways I couldn't ignore. Ryan's constant questions about my personal life that went way beyond fitness. That tracking app with all its invasive permissions that I'd approved without reading. The way he'd pushed for early morning sessions when the gym was nearly empty, and we were basically alone. His casual comment last week about noticing from my app data that I'd been staying up later than usual. He'd been monitoring when I went to sleep and when I woke up. I pulled out my phone and searched for Ryan Mercer Personal Trainer Seattle, expecting to find his professional profiles and client reviews. Nothing came up except the Peak Fitness website listing him as staff with no details. I tried searching for his certification credentials, for any kind of professional presence online, and found absolutely nothing. For someone who claimed to have been training clients successfully for 8 years, he had zero online footprint. No social media, no reviews, no professional website, nothing. That seemed strange for someone in a business that relied entirely on reputation and word of mouth. I called my sister Kendall, needing to talk to someone who knew me well enough to tell me honestly if I was overreacting or being smart. She answered on the third ring, sounding rushed and distracted. "Hey Bree, can I call you back in like 10 minutes? I'm right in the middle of something at work." "Kendall, this is actually really important. Something weird just happened at the gym and I need your advice." I told her everything, about Valerie's warning and the note, about the things she'd claimed about Ryan stalking his clients and installing cameras in their homes. Kendall went completely quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice had changed to that serious protective tone she used when she was genuinely worried. "Okay, this is going to sound paranoid, but I want you to go home right now and search your apartment thoroughly. Look for anything that seems off or out of place. Any small cameras or recording devices you didn't put there yourself. Check your smoke detectors. Check electrical outlets. Check anywhere someone could hide something tiny. And Bree, I want you to delete that fitness app immediately before you do anything else. If that woman is right about it tracking you, you need to cut off his access to your location right now." "You actually think I'm being watched? You think this is real?" My voice came out higher and shakier than I intended. "I think if a stranger took the risk of warning you about something this specific, you should at least check it out. Better to feel stupid for being overly cautious than to ignore a real warning and have something terrible happen. Trust me on this." I drove home going 15 miles over the speed limit, gripping my steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My apartment building had secure entry with a code, but Ryan had been there before when he dropped off those supplements. He would have seen the code I punched in. He could have easily followed me inside on another day without me even noticing. I let myself into my apartment and stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at my space with completely new eyes, trying to see it the way a stranger would see it. Everything looked normal at first glance. My laptop sitting on the coffee table where I always left it, dirty breakfast dishes still in the sink, morning sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. But then I started looking closer, really examining things instead of just glancing around. I checked the smoke detector first, standing on a chair and unscrewing the plastic cover with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Nothing inside except the normal detector components. I moved to the electrical outlet by my bed, the one with the USB charging ports built in that I'd always assumed came standard with the apartment. When I pried off the faceplate with a screwdriver from my kitchen drawer, I found a tiny camera lens pointed directly at my bed. I dropped the faceplate like it had burned me, stumbling backward until I hit the wall behind me and slid down to sit on the floor. There was an actual camera in my bedroom. Someone had been watching me sleep every night, watching me change clothes, watching every single private moment I'd had in what was supposed to be my safe space. I felt sick, violated in a way I'd never experienced before. I forced myself to stand up and keep searching, and I found 2 more cameras. One hidden inside a decorative clock on my living room shelf, pointed perfectly at my couch and kitchen area. Another in my bathroom disguised as a screw head in the towel rack, positioned to see the shower and sink. I called 911 with hands, shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone or press the numbers correctly. While I waited for the police to arrive, I called the gym back and demanded to speak with the manager, my voice coming out harsh and panicked in a way I'd never heard from myself before. A man named Scott answered, sounding bored and irritated until I started explaining why I was calling. I need to know about Ryan Mercer's credentials right now. Is he actually a certified personal trainer or not? Because I just found cameras hidden in my apartment and I think he put them there. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when Scott spoke again, his voice had completely changed. I'm not supposed to discuss employee information with members, but given what you're telling me, I think you need to know the truth. Ryan was hired about 6 months ago, and he presented what looked like valid certifications from a national training organization. But we recently discovered those certifications were completely forged. We've been conducting an internal investigation for the past 2 weeks. Has he actually done something to you? My whole body went cold and numb. He's been stalking me. He got me to download a tracking app and he installed hidden cameras throughout my apartment. I'm waiting for the police right now. Scott's voice became urgent, and I could hear him moving around, probably going somewhere private to talk. You need to file a formal police report immediately and tell them everything. We had another complaint about Ryan 3 months ago from a gym member named Valerie Hutchins. She claimed he'd been stalking her and had somehow gotten into her apartment, but she didn't have concrete proof, and Ryan denied everything convincingly. Management decided not to terminate him without solid evidence. If you have actual proof this time, cameras you can show the police, we need to know about it so we can take action. The police arrived at my apartment within 30 minutes. 2 detectives named Park and Richardson, who carefully photographed and removed all 3 hidden cameras, sealing them in evidence bags. Detective Park sat down with me at my kitchen table, while her partner continued searching my apartment for anything else suspicious. Her expression got grimmer and more serious with every detail I shared. This is actually the 3rd report we've received about Ryan Mercer in the past 18 months, she told me, pulling up a file on her tablet. We've been trying to build a solid case against him, but he's extremely careful and calculating. He never does anything at the gym itself that could be witnessed or documented. Everything he does happens outside, in private, in ways that are very difficult to prove in court. She showed me photos on her tablet of 4 other women, including Valerie, and asked if I recognized any of them from the gym. I nodded, pointing to 2 of them that I'd definitely seen around, but never actually spoken to. Detective Park explained that Ryan had a very specific pattern he followed with every victim. He targeted women who appeared isolated or lonely, women who lived alone and were new to the gym and looking for guidance and community. He'd spend months gaining their complete trust, gathering detailed personal information, and convincing them to download his tracking app. The hidden cameras in their apartments were always his final step, his way of maintaining constant surveillance and control even when he wasn't physically near them. How did he actually get into my apartment to install these cameras without me knowing? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Detective Richardson answered from across the room where he was checking my windows. We believe he makes copies of keys during your training sessions at the gym. He asks clients to store their bags and personal items in the lockers, and while you're distracted and focused on your workout, he has easy access to your belongings. It takes less than 60 seconds to press a key into molding clay or photograph it from multiple angles for making a 3D printed duplicate. They explained they'd been trying to catch Ryan in the act for months, but he'd been smart enough to cover his tracks with previous victims. Until now, the cameras I'd discovered were purchased online using a credit card registered to his real name, probably because he'd gotten overconfident and careless. The tracking app could be traced directly back to a server he was personally paying for every month. When the detectives pulled data from that server after my call, they found stored footage from not just my apartment, but from 6 other women's homes, some of the recordings going back almost 2 full years. Within hours, they arrested Ryan at his actual apartment across town. When they executed the search warrant on his place, they found external hard drives containing thousands of hours of recorded footage from multiple women, detailed handwritten notes about each target's daily schedules and personal habits, and a disturbing collection of stolen personal items: underwear, framed photos, pieces of jewelry, spare keys. It looked like a serial stalker's trophy collection from a crime documentary. Ryan Mercer was convicted 10 months later on 19 separate felony counts, including stalking, burglary, illegal surveillance, identity theft, and computer fraud. The trial revealed the absolutely horrifying scope of what he'd been doing for years. He wasn't a certified trainer at all, and never had been. He'd been forging credentials to get hired at 3 different gyms across the Seattle area over a 4-year period, using each job as a hunting ground to identify vulnerable women he could target and stalk. The tracking app he'd convinced us all to download was something he'd designed and built himself specifically for stalking purposes, made to look like a legitimate fitness tracker while secretly feeding him constant access to our locations, our sleep patterns, and detailed information about our daily routines. Police confirmed he'd installed hidden cameras in at least 7 women's apartments that they knew about, and the detective told me privately there were likely more victims who never realized they'd been watched and would never know what happened to them. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in state prison, and as the bailiffs led him away in handcuffs, Ryan didn't show any remorse or shame. He looked annoyed and inconvenienced, like we'd all dramatically overreacted to something he considered completely harmless and normal. That blank expression scared me more than anything else about the whole experience. The realization that he genuinely didn't believe he'd done anything wrong by violating our privacy and safety so completely. To him, we weren't real people with rights and boundaries. We were just interesting objects to observe and control for his own entertainment. The aftermath of everything was so much harder than I ever expected it to be. I moved out of my apartment within 2 weeks, unable to sleep there anymore, knowing what had happened in that space and how long I'd been watched without knowing. Even in my new apartment across town with different locks and a security system, I struggled with intense paranoia for months. I'd check obsessively for hidden cameras every single day, convinced that every smoke detector and electrical outlet was hiding a lens pointed at me. I covered my laptop camera with tape, kept my phone face down constantly, and felt anxious around anything with a lens. For the first 6 months, I genuinely felt like I was still being watched every moment, even though Ryan was locked up in prison with absolutely no way to reach me or know where I'd moved. Therapy helped me slowly start to heal. My therapist, Dr. Simmons, specialized in helping people recover from stalking and surveillance trauma, and she helped me understand that my hypervigilance and constant fear were completely normal responses to having my safety and privacy violated so thoroughly. She taught me practical strategies to rebuild my sense of security in the world and how to separate reasonable caution from fears that were controlling and limiting my entire life. It took almost a full year of weekly sessions before I felt comfortable enough to even consider going back to a gym, and when I finally did, I only went to a women-only facility where I felt marginally safer and more in control. My relationship with my sister Kendall became so much stronger through all of this. She drove up from Portland the same day I found those cameras and stayed with me for an entire week, helping me pack and move, sitting beside me through police interviews and detective meetings, and just being physically present when I needed someone I trusted. We talk on the phone almost every single day now, and I don't take that connection for granted anymore the way I used to. I realized that my isolation and loneliness had made me vulnerable to Ryan's manipulation in the first place. Having people in your life who actually care about you, who check in regularly and stay involved and connected, that's a form of protection in itself. Valerie and I became genuine friends, bonded by the shared trauma of being Ryan's targets, and by the knowledge that together we'd help stop him from hurting more women. She's doing so much better now, finally able to live her life without the constant fear and frustration that defined her entire year of trying desperately to get someone to believe her warnings. We meet up for coffee about once a month, and sometimes we talk about what happened and how we're coping, but mostly we just talk about completely normal, everyday things. We're both actively trying to reclaim the parts of ourselves that Ryan tried to steal and destroy. Before you go, please hit that subscribe button if this story resonated with you, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Sharing these stories helps protect others, and your support means absolutely everything to me. I learned hard lessons from this nightmare experience. I learned that professional appearances and impressive credentials can be faked by people with bad intentions. I learned that excessive charm and personal attentiveness can actually be manipulation tactics designed to make you lower your guard. I learned that isolation makes you vulnerable in ways you don't recognize until it's almost too late. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts even when they seem paranoid, to actually listen when someone tries to warn me about danger, and to verify things I desperately want to believe are true instead of just accepting them. But the biggest lesson came from Valerie herself. There are people in this world who will put themselves at real risk to protect complete strangers. She could have stayed silent after her own terrible ordeal with Ryan, could have decided it wasn't her problem or responsibility if other women fell into his trap. Instead, she kept showing up at that gym week after week, kept trying to warn us, kept fighting to be believed and taken seriously, even when everyone dismissed her as crazy or jealous. She saved me, and I'll never forget that as long as I live.